And now, sitting in for Bob Lee, Steve Bunin.
It's the deep throat of Spygate who has spoken, and by his account, it's the Nixonian coach who called the shots and isn't seeing the light. In an interview with HBO Sports, Matt Walsh, the former Patriots employee who supplied videotapes of New England stealing signals to the NFL, says Bill Belichick instructed a backup quarterback to relay those signals to starter Drew Bledsoe before New England's 2000 season opener against Tampa Bay. Walsh also says he was told by his superiors how to get around league rules about taping. In his first interview since meeting with the NFL commissioner and a senator this week, Walsh tells HBO Sports, "When I was doing it, I understood what we were doing to be wrong. We went to great lengths to keep from being caught. Just saying that the rules were misinterpreted isn't enough of an apology or a reasoning for what was done." Coach Belichick's explanation for having misinterpreted the rules, to me, that really didn't sound like taking responsibility for what we had done, especially considering the great lengths that we had gone through to hide what we were doing. David Hirschkel covers the Patriots for the Hartford Courant and joins us now on Outside the Lines. What is the most damning revelation in the HBO interview?
Well, Steve, I thought the most fascinating thing, Commissioner, that he misinterpreted the rule.
And he also specified that it was the backup quarterbacks that gave the information to Bledsoe. Tom Brady was on the team but was inactive for that game against Tampa Bay. Why is that such an important distinction to you?
Well, I don't think it's so much important as whether it was John Freeze or Michael Bishop, the two substitute quarterbacks that game. I think, Tom Brady, as a lot of people know, was not active that game, but he was active from then on to the rest of the season. And I think it sort of raises some questions. I mean, we all know Tom Brady was a 6th-round draft pick. He was a backup quarterback in college. All of a sudden, he comes into the NFL with the Patriots, and he's arguably one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. He may go down. It makes you wonder, how much did Tom Brady benefit from this signal-stealing system that the Patriots deployed?
And the Patriots are still saying that they misinterpreted the rules. Before we let you go real quick, what is that response doing to their reputation throughout the league?
Well, I spoke to a former head coach who was a head coach for over 20 years.
As well, we appreciate you joining us on Outside the Lines.
My pleasure.
So again, Walsh detailed that game plan for the Patriots' 2000 season opener against Tampa Bay, a game in which they lost, by the way, 21-16. New England's 2 touchdowns came on a 66-yard punt return by Troy Brown you just saw, and this 39-yard touchdown pass from Drew Bledsoe to Terry Glenn. Sean King was the starting quarterback in that game, now an ESPN football analyst. You were starting for Tampa Bay. What is the MO in the NFL for backup quarterbacks stealing signals?
Well, I think as a backup quarterback, when you go into a ball game, you're trying to assist your ball club in any manner that you can. Okay, I think I have something, but it takes almost the entire game to be obviously correct. Am I obviously correct that I have it right?
So why is videotaping and the information you can get from it so different?
Well, one of the things that I've done is I've spoke to some of the scouts of different teams. And the one thing that is what this signal means, then that's an advantage.
Give us an example of a situation where that sort of information would help you at the line of scrimmage.
Well, I think from a player standpoint, it doesn't really help you. In the national competitive standpoint.
Tony Gwynn, Hall of Fame baseball player, is a guy who famously said, "I'd rather not know if there's a curveball coming and some people say they want to tip me off, steal a sign at second base. The less I know, the better." How much information is too much for a starting quarterback at the line of scrimmage in the NFL?
Well, I think when you think about a starting quarterback, my first job is to get the play, the time to adjust his play calling.
The story continues to evolve. Sean King, we appreciate you joining us. We'll see you on NFL Live.
Thanks.
Our poll question to you: do you consider Bill Belichick's Patriots cheaters, as they've been called by fans and some media around the country? Go to ESPN.com, click on Outside the Links, and let us know. We'll reveal the answer later in the show. NBA playoffs. Both home teams won again last night, both by 7 points. The Lakers over the Jazz to move within 1 victory of the conference finals in the West, and the Celtics doing the same to LeBron, forcing him to answer questions about desperation.
It's win or go home situation, and we got to approach it that way. We're a very good team at home.
At this hour on Outside the Lines, Joe Paterno is at a hospital getting tested for dehydration. He has not been admitted and does expect to leave later today. The 81-year-old Penn State coach still plans on flying to Texas tomorrow for a meeting with UT coach Mac Brown. O.J. Mayo tells the Los Angeles Times he, quote, didn't accept anything, end quote. Outside the Lines reported Mayo took $30,000 worth of improper benefits before and during his time at USC. According to the Miami Herald, one of the 5 suspects in the shooting death of Sean Taylor has pleaded guilty. The suspect will serve 29 years in prison and will cooperate with prosecutors. Baseball already done. Cleveland starters, 43 1/3 consecutive scoreless innings going into the game. That streak ended in the 2nd inning. Johnny Peralta pretty much ended the game in the 7th. His 7th of the season. Indians win it 4-2, their 3rd straight, 44 1/3 innings, the length of the scoreless streak. Ahead in our centerpiece, the studs keep coming stateside, but who is left to star in Japan?
To take away the overall talent of the league, which is kind of like going into the Amazon and cutting down their forests without replacing the trees. Eventually, you have a major ecosystem problem.
How much bigger is the baseball problem when owners seem happy to watch the big names leave? Next on Outside the Lines. On opening day, there were 16 Japanese major leaguers. 10 played last night alone, including Cubs sensation Kosuke Fukudome, 3 for 5 with 2 runs, and Takashi Saito, he of the 1.65 ERA, who picked up his 6th save for the Dodgers. The next big import, the one they're calling the next Daisuke, will help some teams stateside while further depleting baseball in the Far East. Bob Lee on why owners in Japan don't seem to care. Bob Lee reporting. The piece is now up on ESPN.com. ESPN.com's Jim Capel spent 8 days in Japan researching the story and watching Yu Darvish pitch. So, Jim, who did he remind you of?
Well, it's kind of hard to say. It doesn't remind me of anybody particular, but the way he's tall, he's slender, his hair flows. He reminds me a little bit of a right-handed Randy Johnson because he is so unfair. When is Darvish expected to come to the United States? Well, that's the question that everybody wants to know the answer to. There's maybe 3 years that he would be posted and come to the U.S.
Looking at the big picture, it appears that owners are okay with the players in Japan immigrating to the United States. When you talk to the players there in the 8 days that you spent there, what do they think about how this process has changed over the last decade or so?
Well, the players, of course, it's very enticing to come to the U.S. So it kind of depends on who you're talking to, but most of the players want to come here if they feel like they have enough ability.
Interesting insight on the ever-changing world between Japan and the United States and baseball. Jim Capel reporting for ESPN.com. The answer to our poll question coming up on Outside the Lines. Do you consider Bill Belichick's Patriots cheaters? The answer may surprise you. Tonight on ESPN, Spurs and Hornets in New Orleans. Tomorrow night, doubleheader. Celtics and Cavs to start, Lakers and Jazz to finish. The conference semifinals on ESPN. Mets and Nats. The Mets had a no-hitter through 6, but end up losing the game. Carlos Delgado with the liner. Aaron Boone doubles up Carlos Beltran. Nats win it 1-0. The poll question, do you consider Bill Belichick's Patriots cheaters? 71% say yes. Only some of the New England states say no.